What's up, Bucs Squad? I'm your host, Jaron Spor. I'm going to tell you why we just saw the end of an era.
I'm Marcus Ray, and I'm going to tell you why Pitts gave so many fits.
And I'm Ryan Lavoie, and I'm going to tell you why the Bucs season just ended tonight.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's the Buccaneers squad. Everything Tampa Bay Buccaneers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. With a touch of the Buccaneer way, the Buccaneer Squad Show starts now.
What's up, Bucs Squad? Thanks for making Locked On Bucs the first listen every single day and making Locked On Sports Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network. Thank you guys so much. We got a lot to talk about today. It was a rough one to watch tonight. We're going to break down the offense, the defense, and around the NFL. Obviously, that's usually when we do some recap of some games, but we'll just kind of talk about more of the Panthers in this division race more than anything in that one, and then we'll end with our player of the game. We'll also do some Q&A like we usually do in that last one. I've already seen a ton of comments. We've got them. They're fired up today. But let's start with the offense. In my opinion, through the first, really early, especially early fourth quarter up to that point, the offense was looking pretty good. And the Falcons aren't a bad defense. They looked really similar to earlier in the year. And you can just see what a difference a guy like Mike Evans makes, because it made it where Baker didn't have to be perfect. How many times did he throw it and it wasn't really on target, but Mike is just so good that he comes down with it. And then it opened everyone else up. It seemed like it juiced the offense. But then the fourth quarter was just a disaster after that first touchdown. Baker obviously throws the pick, then has a Buca for a first down on a third down that would have sealed the game. Misses it, throws it behind him. Could he have made the catch? Maybe, but it's not a great throw. And the wheels came off.
Well, my thing is this. Tampa Bay didn't run the ball effectively enough. I thought they played well enough to win offensively. Baker's numbers weren't great. I mean, you want to talk about what was he? 17 to 32 for 167, 3 touchdowns, good. Only gave up 1 sack. They ran the ball for 100 yards. It was by committee. And, I mean, Bucky ran the ball 14 times for 37 yards. His longest was 9 yards. Baker got out of there for a scramble. Emeka. See, here's the problem. Now that they have all the pieces back, J-Mac, Chris, Mike, with the exception of Cade, you got Bucky, you got Baker, they're just still not there because they can't stop anybody when it matters. I think offensively, when you score that many points, 28 points, you should win, honestly, in the National Football League. I just think that this team doesn't know how to win. I think they quit. I think even if you listen to Bowles' press conference, the only thing he didn't say is that they were soft. Like, when you start calling grown men soft, like, publicly, I mean, it just does something to you mentally. I just feel like when you're up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, 28 to 14, and you find a way to lose, then it's really like a character flaw, a gut check, and it's something that you have to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, are we really that good? Or are we front runners? And I think the Bucs are front runners. And I just think that the only thing that impressed me tonight is when Baker threw the ball up to Mike Evans on a vertical pass. Because, Jaron, 2 days ago, I said that the Bucs can't go vertical. Like, they just can't stretch the defense. And they didn't even try to stretch the defense until Mike came back. Chris Godwin, I thought he played lights out. Yeah. But it's just not enough. It's just they don't have what they need on defense to complement what they're doing on offense, Ryan.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, we'll certainly be hitting the nail on the head, I think, on defense here in just a moment. But I think to start with the offense again, I think that you saw more explosives. You mentioned it, Marcus, that they were able to go more vertical. This Bucs offense the last few weeks has reminded me a lot of 2022, where they have just kind of creeped along and tried not to make mistakes. And again, that was the year Brady had the long no interception streak, yet the offense was still not very good and certainly not very explosive. And I felt that that's how the Bucs were creeping along the last few weeks. I felt like they tried to become more themselves today. They were really aggressive in the passing game. And, I think that there are mistakes that Baker made. I mean, again, if we do a huge blame pie, I mean, there's a ton of people and a ton of coaches that are going to be on it. But I think that ultimately they did enough. Again, not an A+ game, not even maybe an A- game, but they did enough to put themselves in position. The Falcons, what's going to be a huge story in this game, the Falcons committed 19 penalties for 125 yards. That's a Bijan Robinson rushing stat line, quite
Right.
frankly. And that was their penalty yardage. And the Bucs had 4 for 25. So it's not like this was just a flag fest on both sides. It was Atlanta giving the Bucs chance after chance after chance, both sides of the ball, by the way. And so the Bucs, to their credit, normally, not every single possession, but normally took advantage of it when they were on offense. But they did not generate the consistency needed to give them an A. Like, for example, again, you get the 2 straight touchdown drives. Again, a couple of them aided, or one of them aided by penalties. Okay, so you get the ball back 28-20. Baker throws the pick. Again, good job by the slot corner. Again, he baited in what looked like it was going to be man. Clearly, Baker thought it was going to be man, and then it turns out to be zone. Great interception by the DB. Okay, mistake made. So now Atlanta, who, again, was dumb relentlessly in this game. Atlanta was dumb. I thought if the Bucs won, our intro would be Santa came early for the Bucs in the form of the Atlanta Falcons because of all the penalties and the stupid things that happened. So after Atlanta goes for 2, because the analytics tell you, oh, don't go for 2 at the end of the game, go for it now so that you can try to go ahead and have a second chance if you miss it. Well, they missed both 2-point conversions. So it should have been tied. They're down 2 because they did something stupid. And then the Bucs have another chance. They generate 1 first down, and they get into the 2nd and 14 where Bucky loses the 4 yards. And at that point, you have a really tough decision. I don't envy that decision, where what's the value in getting the clock down to a minute 10, minute 5, something in there, with Atlanta being out of timeouts? Or do you feel that you have to get the first down to win the game? The Bucs felt, and I agree with them, that they had to get the first down to win the game because of this awful defense, which again we'll hit on in a moment. And Baker throws a ball that's just a little off. And that's the margin with this offense. This offense has to be perfect. And when it's not, it's exposed. And when it's not, it's going to lose, because I think Baker has to get some blame tonight because of the pick, because of throwing it behind Ibuka. Yes, Ibuka can catch that. He's had a lot of drops this year. I get it. But you're the franchise guy. You're hurting so badly for a play. You need it in the worst way. And he throws it a little behind. He doesn't put it on the dot, puts it a little behind Ibuka. And then even on the 3rd and 14, by the way, I know the pass rush got there pretty quickly with the blitz, but they showed on the broadcast, Payne Durham's wide open from the get-go. Complete bust. No one went out there. They were like, they're not throwing, with all due respect, to Payne Durham. And you know what? They were right. They were not trying to throw to Payne Durham, with all due respect. So, those are things that, at the same time, more blame on the defense, more blame on the coach. Get it. We'll go over it. But for now, Baker's got to find a way to make one of those plays. And any one of those plays wins them the game. Not throwing the interception, hitting a Buc in stride, finding the busted coverage. And the reality is he didn't. And so, complimentary, the defense set you up to fail, and the offense allowed it to happen.
Well, and early in the season, the team was hitting all those. That was kind of their thing. When anytime there was a
incredibly clutch.
Yeah, you knew they were going to make the play. Not just the quarterback, the receivers were going to make the catch, and the line was going to block, and so on and so forth. In this game, I got to the point, and it happened on that last 3rd down that you were talking about. Anytime that I saw Atlanta was sending more on a blitz, I was like, it's a sack. Before the snap, you knew it was a sack. And usually the pressure came from up the middle. I mean, up the middle, which we talked about it on the pre-show. What was that, Tuesday, where it's just been bad with the guards. And I know there's a bunch of injuries there and stuff like that, but that's where a lot of the pressure was coming from. Now, Baker could have done some things to get out of it, and Ryan Fitzpatrick even talked about that at the halftime. he started seeing some ghosts in the pocket, and I think it's because of how many times he's been hit throughout the season where he just doesn't trust the offensive line. And, Baker after the game took the blame for it because of the pick and because of the pass to Ibuka. That's what he said. That's my fault that we lost this game. Like Ryan said, I would give him blame, but I think there's so much more blame to go around before we got to him. And again, it's not a good pass to Ibuka, but that's the same kind of catch we saw Godwin make in this game twice and Evans making this game twice. Now, Evans is for sure a Hall of Famer. Godwin is a great receiver too, but Godwin isn't a better receiver at this moment than Ibuka is, in my opinion. And so those are the kind of plays, and that was something else we talked on Tuesday about Ibuka dropping some passes that he needs to catch. That's, again, it kind of reared its ugly head in this one. There was actually two, because there was one earlier in the game that I don't know if he would have actually scored on it, but he dropped it also. It would have been a pretty big gain. I think they ended up scoring on that drive anyway, so it didn't matter. But just we're starting to see that more and more. I saw someone put it in the chat. I don't know. He has to be up there in drops, but someone said that he leads the NFL in drops. I haven't looked at the league leaders, but Ibuka's got to be up there. And but again, like you said, Ryan, those are plays that we made earlier in the year that we're not making now. And because they're not making it and they're not being perfect, they're now losing the games, these close games that they were winning earlier in the season.
Well, one of the things that let me correct myself. I was looking at the wrong stat sheet. I was actually looking at the first game when from week 1, but I don't think Baker played terribly, other than the interception that he threw in the clutch. I thought that gave the Falcons a lot of life, but I still think that offensive line is struggling to give up 5 sacks. Okay. Like I said, Godwin, I thought he was getting off early, and then he just kind of disappeared. I thought they should have went back to him. Mike Evans, though, his presence was felt as far as being who he is, a Hall of Famer, a big-time guy that can make all the catches, run all the routes. They targeted him 12 times, so, kind of thought maybe towards the end on the interception that Baker may have forced him the ball. But I just don't think the Bucs know how to close it out. And, they were at home. They have those unlucky uniforms on, which I don't mind looking at them, but I just don't like watching them when they play in them because they don't know how to win in those uniforms. But at the same time, I just feel like this team was better when everybody was hurt. They just were, because I think they played a little more wide open. They were a little more loose. Like I said, I think the Detroit game took their heart and soul, but the sky is not falling, but it really is. And at this point, they probably won't make the playoffs. So to watch Atlanta go in there defensively, when you have 19 penalties and still win, then you probably outplayed the other team, or the other team isn't very good. Ryan, what you think?
On the road, too. Not to mention on the road.
Yeah, I mean, again, we would have to chart every drive that Atlanta cost themselves points by committing penalties on offense, or enabled the Bucs to score more points. Now, the Bucs did that once. One of their 4 penalties was costly. It was an offsides on Zion McCollum. I thought he probably got back. I'm not going to start worrying about how officials call the game in a game where Atlanta had 19 penalties. But that was a 3 that became a 7. But when you have a team just completely showing why they're 4-9 at all times, it wasn't like they were having a world-beating game. It wasn't that, they had figured Tampa's game plan out. No, they just, here's a face mask. Here's an illegal contact. Want another face mask? How about a trip and a face mask? Just constantly. And so the Bucs were given so many other opportunities. One other thing I'll say about Baker, again, I know, not as much blame there as on defense. This is just what we're going with first. One thing I'd like to see Baker do more of, I'd really like him on early downs to start throwing the ball away. I felt a couple of the sacks were C+, B- offensive line play that became sacks because he kind of rolled left and he kind of rolled right. And then if there's somebody there, I can't scramble anymore. First and second down throwaways are neutral plays. Third down throwaways are wins for the defense. But first and second and 10, throw that ball away. You've got a lot of different receiving options that you can think of something to do on third and again, 9 or 10. But 3rd and 15, 2nd and 17, that's rough to come back from. And so, again, it's a little thing. It's nitpicking, but you got to nitpick, right? You're 7-7 now. There's a lot of picking nits right now. And so I'd like to see Baker. I know he's so great at extending plays, but I like him on early downs to be a little bit more intentional about judging if there's actually something there or not and getting rid of the ball.
And we'll talk about this in the next segment, but I wanted to bring it up real quick just because we talked about penalties. That first touchdown drive, the Falcons faced a 1st and 20 and a 1st and 15 on the drive due to penalties and got first downs on both of those. And then, obviously, that was the one that McCollum went offsides on the field goal, and they end up scoring a touchdown on that drive. So, yeah, even though they had the penalties, they kept working their way out of it. But we'll talk about the defense coming up next. All right. Well, guys, it's 2025, almost 2026, and those days of waiting for something to become a full-blown emergency before you see a doctor, they are over. No more walking it off for 6 months. No more pretending that weird shoulder stiffness is just sleeping wrong. It's time to take your health seriously, and ZocDoc makes that easier than ever. Because staying healthy is more than hitting the gym or eating right. It's about actually getting things checked out when something feels off. Using ZocDoc makes scheduling easier. Search for in-network doctors and book right in the app. Real appointment times are listed, including same-day visits. No more back-and-forth phone calls or waiting weeks to be seen. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments and get the care you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. After watching that performance, a lot of people might be scheduling something with ZocDoc tomorrow, especially this defensive performance. But let's dive into that. Yeah, it's another terrible performance by the defense overall. I mean, they just could not defend Kyle Pitts whatsoever. And some of it was they were just leaving them wide open. Kyle Pitts finished with 11 catches for 166 yards, 3 touchdowns. We talked about how terrible Kirk Cousins has been this year and even last year, which is why he got benched on Tuesday. He throws for 373 and 3 touchdowns. And remember, he should have had like 450 and 4 touchdowns if Sills catches that wide open touchdown pass. It was, a terrible day. And the 3rd and 28 also kind of just solidified everything.
Well, like they say that defense wins championships, right? I've never been a big fan of that slogan. But once again, I mean, Kirk Cousins dialed up this defense. He carved them up like a Thanksgiving turkey. You're talking about 30 of 44, 373 and 3 touchdowns. Remember a month and a half ago, the Bucs were sacking people by committee. Now they can't sack a sack of potatoes at this point. And it's like Reddick got the one. And it's like when you really watch them, you kind of got the feeling that we all knew that Atlanta was going to win. How do you blow a 14-point lead in the 4th quarter and they go for 2 twice, don't get it, somehow get the ball back in the game with a walk-off field goal? And they had Bijan Robinson. Trust me, listen, he's a great player. I mean, he is big, fast, strong, everything you've ever looked for in a running back. And Jaron, if you remember, I told you they were going to flex him out, and they do it anyways. But they really did it this game where he was playing a lot of receiver and with motion and do all the stuff, and that's what you do to a team that plays a lot of man-to-man. But for him to carry the ball for 19 times and 93 yards, and then just have the audacity to have 8 receptions for 82 yards, it's like, between him and Pitts, it just became one of those things where Pitts had 11 catches for 166 and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's unheard of. I know he's 6'6", 250. He's unguardable. But we're talking about a team that was 4-9, mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. And when the game was on the line, the Bucs couldn't find a way to get a stop. It was 3rd and 28. Then it's 4th and 14, and you let them convert. And I just think defensively, the Bucs just aren't very good. I think the scheme is bad. And I just think Todd Bowles just doesn't, he just can't call a game. He just can't call a game for 4 quarters. I think he can call a game for 1 quarter, and that's the first one. That's your game plan. But when it's time to make in-game adjustments, I just don't see it. And the Falcons really just found a way to just get everybody the ball when it mattered the most. And I just thought Bijan, number 7, he was the best player on the field. And how are you going to beat the Rams, the Seahawks, the Bears, anybody in the NFC, the Packers, that's worth a salt if you just if you're going to lose to the Saints and the Falcons, the bottom feeders of your own division, you actually don't even deserve to go to the playoffs. That's just my opinion. So I just thought they choked. I thought that they played well enough to win for about 3 quarters. You give up 15 points in the 4th quarter. And then on that final drive, they just didn't have any answers. And it's kind of hard to watch the Bucs play defense now ever since the Detroit game.
Yeah, no, it's been unacceptable. I mean, some of the numbers behind what Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts did tonight, Kirk Cousins' season high for yards was 234. He had 3 touchdowns on the season coming in this game on 134 passing attempts. Kyle Pitts did not have a 100-yard receiving game coming in, and he had just 1 touchdown all season long. And, I mean, between Pitts and Kirk Cousins, every time he plays the Bucs, I mean, he looks like the MVP of the league every single time. That's what the Bucs make him look like. Even though against the rest of the league, he doesn't look like a starting quarterback. Kyle Pitts looked like if you mesh together Antonio Gates and like Randy Moss or something. You just mesh those two together into here's this hybrid tight end guy, and let's see if the Bucs can cover him. Apparently not. Drake London was not in this game. Drake London's a really good receiver. They didn't have to worry about him. Didn't matter. I cannot believe the Bucs defense has come to this level, because if Todd Bowles and company were supposed to be able to excel at one thing, it's figuring out what to do on the defensive side of the ball. He is one of, I think, about a third of the league now as defensive coaches. I think you got 20, 22, something like that, offensive head coaches. You're down in numbers on the defensive side of the ball. So if you're a defensive-minded head coach, I need the defense to be a quality unit. I don't need to be losing because of the defense. And again, we argued in the first segment about what can the Bucs done differently offensively. Well, defensively, they don't have a clue at this point. The Atlanta Falcons went up and down the field. Again, their own penalties and some of their own ineptitude prevented them from scoring more. You mentioned, Jaron, earlier, the drop by Sills that would have been a walk-in touchdown, it appeared. You had multiple holds. Again, those 19 penalties, several on both sides of the ball, obviously. So even though I think there were more defensive penalties, still plenty on offense to go around. And again, when you get up 14 points on your home field, I mean, any field in the 4th quarter, really, but then your home field, like, can you pin your ears back and get one takeaway? Can you pin your ears back and get the key sack or key fumble? And, the Bucs almost had it. They had about half their team circling around a Darnell Mooney fumble at the 10-yard line. And between the 4 or 5 Bucs and the 1 Falcon, guess who got it? The Falcon got it. No. And, Hassan Reddick gets the 1 sack of the day for the Bucs, a strip sack. And again, that was a weird ruling. Again, I know that that's a rule. Tie goes to the offense, what have you. But usually they let the pile play out. Whoever comes out of it gets it. And the Bucs did come out of it with the pile. But whatever. That's your 1 sack of the most statue quarterback in the National Football League. They're not rolling out Kirk Cousins. He's not evading anybody. It was one thing for Tyler Shuck to have 30-yard touchdown run and a couple other successful runs last week. Kirk Cousins gets to stand there, and he's not going to get sacked. He's going to get hit a couple of times all game. Every level of this defense is failing them. Every way in which this defense could fail is failing. And again, it's just not acceptable. As Marcus said, the Saints and Falcons, back-to-back weeks, coming to your home place. I know we argue. I see it a lot, and I've been to a lot of Bucs games, and the road crowd presence is unfortunately very real for most teams. Any team from the Northeast, any big brand, they bring a lot of road fans, unfortunately, in Ray J. But not when the Falcons and Saints come there, because it happens every year, and they're Southern teams too. They don't have a bunch of retirees in the area. They don't have a bunch of people flying in for warmer weather. They already have warm weather. And so those are the best attended games in terms of ratio of Bucs fans to non-Bucs fans. So there's no like, oh, okay, it's a mixed bag. No, that's a home crowd. That is a pure home crowd. And you have that with your defense and you still can't excel. I don't understand how you have every advantage against bad football teams and you cannot get a single stop when the game is on the line. And again, that's going to be this team's undoing. It is this team's undoing.
Well, at the start, I said this is an end of an era, and I think we just saw the end of the Todd Bowles era. And I don't like to call for people to be fired. I just don't like to do that. But my one rule when it comes to head coaches, if the side of the ball that you specialize is the worst unit, you probably need to go. Now, obviously, if it's your first year there and you're building it up, or your second year, like that's different. But when you've been there a while, if that's now the worst unit and it's getting worse, like it is with Tampa, I think you're probably gone. Levante David, I think he's probably gone after this year. They're going to have to probably strip away a lot of the defensive guys, honestly. And then obviously offensively, they have guys like Chris Godwin and, Mike Evans is getting older and things like that. So I do think it's kind of the end of an era. But Todd Bowles' press conference afterwards was very telling. In one answer, he dropped 7 F-bombs in one answer and basically was kind of questioning their manhood and toughness. And usually when a coach starts doing that, at least like what I've seen from press conferences, that usually means they kind of feel like they're losing the locker room a little bit, and the teams are starting to quit. I mean, Mike Evans, there's the video of him walking to the locker room after the game, just screaming 3rd and 28, 3rd and 28. Like, you can tell how frustrated the whole team is. But I wanted to send this to you, Marcus, because on that 4th and 14, now, I couldn't see what everyone was doing, but it kind of looked like they were in cover 2. They had a guy kind of covering the flat and then a safety over the top. And then the offensive player just kind of split the middle. I think it was Sills, split the in-between of them right at the first down sticks and caught the ball. This goes back to kind of our conversation when we've talked about football IQ. Like, Bowles can call that, but as a corner, the flat guy ain't going to beat you on a 4th and 14. It's the guy that's just ran past you to the stick. So why aren't you dropping a little farther back to cover that?
You know what, Jaron, that's a great point. So, like, what you're talking about is understanding the situation, right? It's 4th and 14, so you want to play the sticks. And a lot of times when you see routes versus zone coverage, there'll be some type of high-low. There'll be some type of what we call cheese, like, so something that you can nibble on, something to like bait you. And just to get high load as a corner in that coverage and have the ball thrown over your head while you're jumping a route that you could have tackled for the game, it's just unacceptable. And so I'm not always sure if Todd Bowles makes the right call, but regardless of what he calls, the expectation is for those guys to execute, and it just didn't happen. And so, like, when you really watch them play, it's almost like the offense knows what the defense is going to be in. Like, one thing I hate in the NFL is when, like, there's a long yardage situation and then they give up a big play to make it manageable for the next down. So if it's 2nd and 20 and you play prevent and then they get 17 yards, now it's 3rd and 3. Right. And that's something that actually hurt them against the Saints, too. But I think what's happening now is everybody knows whoever plays the Bucs, I think they figured out that if you keep it close, they're going to crack. And they're going to crack on defense. Last week, the offense couldn't get it done at the end. But this week, the defense just found a way to lose. And Kirk Cousins played like he was the NFL most valuable player. Like, games like this saves his career. It just prolongs it. I remember he was at Michigan State. I was on a whole nother network 15 years ago. And I just remember him doing things at Michigan State. I mean, he's the check down king. Today, he checked it down when he needed to, but he made throws with a lot of confidence. But the Bucs just don't execute when it matters most, and it showed today.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add, I know we got another break coming up, that again, on that last sequence, there was a decision whether to go ahead and make it 3rd and 18 or to take it in 2nd and 28. And look, I hate to be this cynical, but did it matter? Like honestly, were the Bucs going to find a way to give this up no matter what? Because I feel like what you were saying, Marcus, is that they couldn't afford to be aggressive because Pitts was whipping them whenever they would go man, and they still couldn't get home when they blitzed. The only time they ever got home was that one play to start that drive. And so it felt like no matter what they do, that, again, personnel schematically, they don't have enough of either. And so when the game is on the line, like it was, 2nd and 28, you should be feasting as a pass rusher. 2nd and 28, you should be able to make a play on the ball as a DB. And you're stuck with, okay, 4th and 14, still not a high percentage play, but still pretty high percentage apparently when you're playing the Bucs defense.
Well, and like Marcus said, it was all set up by a delayed release from Kyle Pitts on the 3rd and 28, and they're in so far much prevent that he's able to pick up 14 and make it a little more manageable. Now, 4th and 14, it's still the odds are on your side, but at least it's more manageable now for them. So we'll see what they see if they can figure anything out, because that hasn't looked good the last several weeks. But all right, coming up next, we're gonna go around the NFL, but more kind of talk about the Panthers, what they got coming up. Talk about what the Bucs have coming up on the schedule. So don't go anywhere. All right, well, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I know a lot of people that use PrizePicks during both football Sundays and NBA tips-offs. It keeps every game exciting. They like picking their favorite players, player like Baker Mayfield, or if you go for the NBA route, Stephen Curry, to see how their predictions play out. Now, download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right, we're back with another episode of our squad show, and just like we say every single episode, this is just extra content that we do for the Locked On Bucs YouTube channel. We do it a couple times a week. Doesn't take anything away from what James does. He does a great job. Even had a live earlier today. If you guys haven't checked that out, finish listening to this and then go watch that one as well. But let's dive in to the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, that's now where all eyes are turning to for the Bucs, and have been really the last couple weeks, because Atlanta's officially been eliminated. Last week they were. The Saints are obviously eliminated. But Carolina, they have the Saints on the road this weekend, a Saints team that they lost to at home before playing Tampa Bay twice and then Seattle. I would say, again, it's not a good situation you're in right now. None of us feel confident that they're going to be able to beat the Panthers twice, let alone maybe not even one time. But at least, with this loss, you would assume Carolina is going to lose to Seattle. And so now you're back on the same kind of playing field. They play the Saints, you play the Dolphins. Both games you should win, but you should have won these last 2 games. So we'll see. But Marcus, how do you kind of feel like with Carolina? And they're playing a lot better football than Tampa is right now too.
Well, Seattle's coming off a big win. So, a straight blowout. And they exploded versus Atlanta in the second half. Obviously, it was 6-6 at halftime. But as I look at the NFC as a whole, when you think about Philadelphia will most likely win the East. And then you have the Packers and Bears. They have to figure this thing out. They're going to play each other again. And they're right at the top. But Detroit is right there creeping. If Detroit wins out, I'm sure they'll get in. Carolina and Tampa Bay, obviously the divisional winner will get in. I feel very strongly that Carolina's going to win the division at this point. I mean, we all picked Atlanta to win. You, I, James, like we try to have a little reverse psychology there, but we kind of knew that the
Didn't
Bucs
work.
were. I mean, I picked Tampa Bay to win, and we just flipped right mid-show. So it's just like, a month and a half ago when we started this show, it was okay. The Bucs are going to win; they'll be in first place, and then Carolina won't matter. Well, it matters way more than it should. I actually think Carolina may even beat Seattle because of the fact that the Bucs lost. Like Carolina's their circumstance have changed tremendously with the Bucs' performance in the last 6 or 7 games. So with that being said, when you look at the standings, the Rams and the Seahawks sitting at 10-3, and then San Francisco at 9-4. I mean, it's looking real slim if Tampa Bay doesn't win out that they'll even get in, period. If Carolina wins the division, Tampa won't get a wild card bid because the Detroit, San Fran, Seattle, they have a better record. Even a second place, let's just call it Packers or Bears or whoever. Like, so at this point, Tampa Bay is in a do or die situation, and it doesn't look good. And one of the last things I'll say before Ryan goes is, I think they got a little too comfortable with we've been through this before. The start off hot, mid-season slump, and then they recover miraculously. It's not the same football team. And these teams aren't going to let you keep doing that every year. And I think they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar a little bit. And we all kept saying, wait till they get healthy. Wait till they get everybody back. I mean, they had J-Mac out there. They had Mike. They had Chris. I mean, Kay wasn't there, but they had Bucky. Like, everybody's back except for maybe let's say the offensive line, which is the most important part. But at the same time, I don't think this team knows how to win with pressure on the line. And I think everything is favoring Carolina. Even if Carolina loses to Seattle, they may beat the Bucs twice. And there's no guarantee that the Bucs will even beat Miami. So you have to understand that at 7-7, after being 6-2, it just doesn't look good.
Yeah. So again, we talked a couple of weeks ago about how good the math was for Tampa if they could just take care of one or two things, because they were going to have so many different ways of having a tiebreaker over Carolina, not just the sweep of them. If they had beaten Atlanta or New Orleans, then they would have been able to split with the Panthers, have the same record, and be the tiebreaker, get in over Carolina. That's now not the case unless Carolina loses to New Orleans again this Sunday. And I'm going to assume for the world that will not happen. I think New Orleans has had their day, and they're going to, I guess they'll play with pride as any professional would, but I would be stunned if they sweep Carolina somehow. And so at this point, assuming Carolina beats New Orleans, the Bucs will have to sweep Carolina at that point, because Carolina would be at 8 wins, Bucs at 7. You got 2 out of 3 against each other, or excuse me, you got 2 against each other. You split those. Carolina's at 9, Tampa's at 8. Tampa beats Miami. Carolina loses Seattle. You're both 9-8. What happens there? Well, again, if Carolina's win is against New Orleans, they're going to have a better divisional record at 4-2. Tampa would be at 3-3. Carolina goes. So the only way for the Bucs to split with the Panthers now and win the division is Carolina losing specifically to New Orleans. Again, I doubt that happens. It only happens if Carolina plays out of the bye week the way Tampa's played since the bye week, quite frankly. So the Bucs are going to have to be in a situation where they're going to have to sweep Carolina. And, coming in the season, I would have said decent probability of that. But the way they played now, the way Carolina's playing, again, and Marcus, you hit on a little bit, there's something within Carolina where one week they kind of still look like the team at the beginning of the year that we thought would be pretty bad. And then the next week they look like, wait a minute, they can beat almost anybody in the league. And again, they're not consistent enough to formulate that into any sort of playoff run if they get there or anything like that. But I think it's enough to say, if out of 2 games, can they beat Tampa once? Absolutely. And so that's why I've started the show so doom and gloom, because Tampa, all they had to do was beat some teams that are going to be in the top 5 or top 10 drafting order. I guess Atlanta won't because of this win, but also because of the fact that their pick is owned by the Rams. But, they just had to beat a team that was getting Tyler Shuck quarterback play. They just had to beat a team that was on a quarterback that they had already moved on from last year, speaking of Atlanta with Penix. And a combined 6-19 record coming into these 2 games. And so the Bucs have no one to blame but themselves. They would have had easy math. They would have been able to split with Carolina. Heck, if they win both those games against New Orleans and Atlanta, there was still a world they could have gotten swept by Carolina if Carolina loses Seattle, Tampa beats Miami, etc. All that's gone. All that's gone. And so the Bucs will have to sweep Carolina, assuming the Panthers beat the Saints this weekend. And again, this was all in the Bucs' control, and they've completely blown it.
Yeah, and I just want to preface this. I do not think Tampa's going to win the division. I think the Bucs or the Panthers are going to win the division. I think the Panthers are going to the playoff. I do not think the Bucs are making the playoff. But with that being said, if you want to look at any kind of positive, is their next game is against Carolina, and it's at home, and you get 10 days of rest. So you at least have a good margin to kind of get things right if you were. Now, with that being said, you just lost back-to-back games at home against Atlanta and against the Saints. So it's not
first game's at Carolina. First game's in
okay.
Charlotte.
Well, I was looking at the schedule and I thought it said it was. I'm looking at my bad. I'm looking at the Panthers schedule. I thought I was looking at the Bucs schedule, but still, you get 10 days off in between, so maybe you can figure something out. The other positive is then if you play them at the end of the year, and let's say the playoff is on the line. You're the team that's been to the playoffs. They are the up-and-coming team. They're going to feel that pressure, in my opinion, a little more than you are. And so those would be the 2 positives that I would say.
Well, I was at the game a year ago when the last game of the year when the Bucs had to beat Carolina for a play-in game. So, I mean, I think if it comes down to that, I'll give the nod to the Bucs, but I don't think they're going to go into Carolina and win. So with that being said, it's like Todd Bowles has to find a way to convince this team that they're still the best team in the division and then go out and prove it. And I think from week to week, each team is exposing something wrong with that defense. And then the other team that they play next, they've been able to piggyback off of it. So last week we saw the Saints attack the hashes and attack the linebackers. But for the Atlanta Falcons to be able to beat Tampa with a tight end, a very athletic tight end, gifted, and a running back that's about as perfect body type, size, and speed that I've seen since Adrian Peterson. It's like, well, what is Carolina going to do to further expose this defense? And the lack of leadership, the lack of playmaking, the lack of a big-time guy on defense to just put the cape on and say we're not going to lose. You can't just rely on Baker Mayfield. So offensively, it's just not there. It hasn't been there, and they have all the pieces. I'm not sure if they know what to do with everybody now that they're back. But I thought Mike Evans showed up and showed out coming off an injury. But they just don't have a guy on defense that can just will them to win.
And again, we've talked a little bit about some of their personnel. We've talked scheme and that sort of thing. And again, I think that despite having, in general, one guy at each level that they really like, they have had numerous guys just not be able to improve and step up. And, again, I think that when it comes to this Carolina game, I know there'll be a whole show next week about it, previewing it. Carolina's become a very run-heavy team. They've been able to go run play action because of that. Rico Dowdle has had an excellent surprise season for them after being 1,000-yard back in Dallas kind of out of nowhere. And they've really been able to emphasize the run part of that and not put a lot in Bryce Young's shoulders. And again, I think when it comes down to what you're saying, Marcus, even though I would say in general, the Bucs should feel decent about a team that likes to run the ball first. Again, they're still getting gashed enough. They've still given up enough big plays they've not been good enough around Vita Vea on the defensive line that, like, yeah, it's totally reasonable Carolina could get the Bucs on the back foot, be able to run the ball well enough, then set them up for play action and have Tet McMillan be able to go down the field on them. So again, I think that what the Bucs look, if you're one a bright side, because I know there's been a little bit more positivity there, I will say this. It does come down to 2 games. And again, whether or not we think they can even win one of them, let alone both of them now, is to be determined. But the Miami game, to be fair, only matters if Carolina loses to New Orleans. Otherwise, it's just to control your destiny. The Bucs need to win 2. Carolina needs to win 1. What can you go out and prove against the team that you're vying for the division for? But again, clearly, I just think there's so much disappointment and frustration, as there should be, about the fact that the Bucs could have made this way easier, way simpler, and the easiest part of their schedule, and they have done no such thing. So I don't see how you have much confidence in them being able to win these 2 games with all the frustrations, all the question marks going on in that locker room right now.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. All right, coming up next, we'll give our player of the game, and we'll do some Q&A. So get those questions in. We've already got a couple, so we'll do that coming up next. Well, car shopping should feel exciting, not confusing. And with CarGurus, you get the confidence you deserve. They cut through all the noise so you can actually see the best deals on the cars you want, because when it comes to a big purchase, you deserve the best deal. And CarGurus makes that whole process simple by giving you real information, real deal ratings, and more listings than anyone else, so you can shop the way you want. Use CarGurus deal ratings to compare cars quickly without having to guess whether the price is fair. You'll love being able to filter by everything, mileage, trim, features, so you're only seeing cars that actually fit what you need. CarGurus connects you with trusted dealerships for a transparent and hassle-free buying process. With over 4 million listings, the most of any major online automotive marketplace, you'll always find the best deal. Shop the way you want with the tools, data, and unbiased deal ratings that make it easy. Buy or sell your next car today at CarGurus.com. That's CarGurus.com, CarGurus.com. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back for one final segment. This is our player of the game segment and also our Q&A. Let's actually go to the Q&A first, just because, I think player of the game, there's probably Mike Evans, and that's about it. But we can get to that at the very end. But there's some people that are asking a lot of questions. One of the questions we got kind of earlier in the day was for Marcus, and they were asking, if after watching this game, who would you place the most blame on?
I would place the most blame on Todd Bowles, because he calls the defense. A lot of times head coaches, get too much blame. They get too much credit, just like quarterbacks. I mean, they get too much blame. They get too much credit. So for me, the fact that the Bucs keep getting dialed up by different opponents, regardless of what their record is, regardless of who the quarterback is, it's like these other coordinators are just finding a way to anticipate what Bowles is going to be in when it matters, and they convert and they execute, and they just have his number. So I just think defensively, when you have a head coach that actually calls the plays, I know McVay calls it on offense, and there's a lot of guys that, call their own stuff. And if that's the case, then they have to take the onus. And I just think Todd Bowles just, I don't want to say it's a lack of preparation. I just think that he does what he does, and then they know what he's going to do. And so they know what to call. So that first question, if that was for me, put it on Todd Bowles and the defense.
And Ryan, if you want to add to that, there's another part to it that someone else just commented, and they said, do we feel that Bowles has lost the locker room? That was something I kind of touched on. When he started making comments like that and almost talked like he felt the team was entitled, it almost feels like he is losing the locker room, and he kind of knows it.
I believe when a coach is calling out players like that and starting to question their will to win, that type of thing, as you said earlier, maybe their manhood, I think it's a 2 roads diverged at that point. You're either going to respond as a locker room and say, we're going to run through someone's face now, and we're not about that. We're winners, and we're going to prove that to you and to everyone else. Or you're going to say, nah, screw you, man, because I was giving my all, and you didn't put me in position like I thought, like you thought I should be in, and that sort of thing. So, I mean, I think it's I think it's an opportunity to galvanize the locker room, but I mean, I would look to the leaders. What does Mike Evans think? What does Lavonte David think? I did see something. I've not been able to actually see the full quote, but there was some locker room audio from a little less than an hour ago the headline was Lavonte David says he cares for Todd Bowles. He cares about Todd Bowles. I mean, that's a decent start when the leader of your defense is seemingly saying that he has a lot of belief in Todd Bowles. But I mean, the reality is it's got to be all those guys. It can't just be Lavonte. Got to be all those guys. And so I think it's teetering. How can it not be? Mike Evans is yelling down the sidelines, yelling up the tunnel, that sort of thing. But I mean, I guess the back pedal answer is we'll see when they get to Carolina. We'll see how they come out in that first quarter. We'll see how hard they're hitting and how hard they're blocking, and go from there.
As you mentioned, I think that'll be a really good tell. Has the team quit? Because I haven't felt like the team has necessarily quit yet. But if they go into Carolina after this gut punch and they look like a team that quit, then he's definitely lost the locker room. It's probably hard for Lavonte too, because this is a guy you won a Super Bowl with, you spent a lot of your career with. I'm sure he does care for him, but I'm sure he's frustrated as well. Someone else asked, should Todd give up the defensive play calling to Foot for the rest of the year just to have a different voice? Marcus, what do you think?
Oh, I agree 100%. I actually thought this should have happened probably 5 games ago. I think Larry Foote is young. He's innovative. I know he interviewed for the Detroit Lions coordinator position last year. He didn't get it, but it was more like target practice because at some point, I think Larry Foote's going to become a head coach. Obviously, he was a freshman when I was a senior, so I'm probably a little biased. Senior at Michigan, Detroit Persian, and Larry has come a long way, and he comes from that Dickie LeBeau tree too. He understands the 3-4. I know he does things in the pass game, but it's like, so one thing Todd Bowles does, whether you guys know it or not, is he allows his co-coordinators to call games in the preseason because he wants them to get like some experience, and it gives him like an insurance policy as far as what may work, what may not work. But I really think if he wants to save his job, if Todd Bowles wants to save his job, pass the play calling to somebody else. Do all of the stuff behind the scenes, game plan, run practice, run the team. Let Larry Foote call the game. And if he fails, guess what? You failed too. So it's like you can't go wrong. So it's either going to be a lose-lose or a win-win. But whoever that person that asked that question in the chat, kudos to you. Me, I'm a Larry Foote guy. He's going to be a head coach in this league in the next 5 years. He's only 45 years old. I think right now is the time to turn him loose, and I think he'll figure something out.
Ryan, do you agree with that?
I do actually, because I know that Todd has called defense forever. I mean, he got the job from being the defensive coordinator for Bruce Arians. He was a defensive guy before his Jets tenure. He's always been someone respected in the league, but clearly whatever he's seeing, whatever he's thinking can get the best out of this defense. He's not. Like you just have to grade the performance, call it as he is not getting anything out of this defense. And I refuse to believe with what the Bucs had coming back from last year, for what they drafted, from just the roster as a whole, I refuse to believe this defense should be like 27th or 28th in the league after today's game. I refuse to believe that. Now, it doesn't mean I think it's top 5 talent. It doesn't mean I think it should be elite. But there's a wide gap from top 5 to bottom 5. And I think that these last 3 games, I think it's clear as day. I don't think he's going to be the head football coach of the Buccaneers if they lose the division, nor do I think he should be. And so you have to go and do everything in your power to find a way to do this. And, Larry Foote and Marcus, again, you know him, but I don't know how much the average person even realized who would be next in line on the staff, because Todd has just taken it so much upon himself to run so much of this defense. And so I don't mind it at all because, again, quite frankly, I know it's not always great. It's not always a great point, but like, can you get much worse than this on the defense side of the ball? It's not that you're not even like you're 27th, 28th in the league, whatever. You technically could get a few spots worse. You just performed like this against the Saints and the Falcons. Like, again, for these two games, how could you do worse at that point? So, yeah, I know. I think I'm good with that. I'm good if Larry Foote ends up being getting an opportunity. I don't think that he will. By the way, prediction wise, I don't think that Todd will relinquish it, but I do think he should.
I got one more with that too, and I think if you let someone else call the plays, then like you don't know what they're going to do because they haven't called a game. So like an opposing coordinator will not be able to say, "I know, I seen this," because that person hasn't called. I mean, the scheme will be relatively the same, but there's still a bag of tricks in there because it's not really about the scheme. It's about when to call what. But I also think I agree with you, Ryan. I don't think Larry will get an opportunity because Todd's going to go down with the ship. Like if he's going to go down, lose a division and lose his job, he's going to do it on his own accord. And he's not going to be able to like give somebody else the reins and then take the fall for them. But I'm just telling you, I really think if somebody else, in particular, if Larry got a chance to call the game, if not even call the entire game, like call certain situations. Like I don't think Todd is taking suggestions in certain situations. Like on that 4th and 14, there may have been a better call than cover 2. You know, I mean, you could have played man-to-man cover 2 and had defensive backs trailing, undercutting with help over the top. But instead of giving grass, you could have had a guy covering a guy.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, just the tendency type stuff that people can pick up on with Todd, they would not be able to pick up with on Larry Foote because, you know, maybe they're like, hey, Todd, on 3rd and 10, we know Todd's going to blitz 60% of the time, but then Larry might drop out of that, not blitz at all. So stuff like that. I know we only have like 3 minutes left, but let's do the player of the game real quick. I know that Mike Evans is the easiest one, so he would be my player of the game, and if y'all want to go that route, I'll let you. But I just want to give a shout-out to Jalen McMillan, because it did not look like he was going to play at all this year with that neck injury. And there were some worries. You know, anytime there's a neck injury, you're worried about a guy's career and all this stuff. And he looked really good. I was hoping he would get that touchdown on that first drive, which they called him just barely short of it. But I wanted to give a shout out to him because he looked really good in this game.
Yeah, he had 2 targets, and he caught both of them for 38 yards. And coming off a neck injury to go out there and block and just, you know, catch passes. I think player of the game, obviously, is Mike Evans. I mean, he's just Mike is Mike, and he had 6 grabs, and he went for a ton of yards. But I think that for me, the player of the game happened in waves. I thought Chris Godwin was a player early, and then I thought, like, Baker was the player of the game in the middle rounds, and then I thought Mike was a player of the game overall. Mm-hmm. So, to me, it just seemed like offensively, I don't have a lot of gripes. I just feel like the turnover that Baker, I would have gave Baker the player of the game if he didn't throw the interception.
Yeah.
I mean, but when you got guys coming off an injury and getting out there playing, getting cleared, and then like trying to find a way to make plays, I mean, though you have to tip your cap to those guys.
Yeah, 100%. I go Mike Evans. You saw how meaningful it was. It's not like he was wide open and Baker's just throwing him an easy pass that anyone in the league would hit. He's having to throw him a couple jump balls, a couple of really tough plays that Mike made. You saw the impact that he still has. Unfortunately, we'll never know if he gets that 1,000 yards if he's healthy this year, but this game kind of gave me the inkling that he would have, that he's still plenty good. He drew a bunch of penalties on Atlanta, of course, who didn't. But, you know, Mike is the player of the game. I will say, if I give an honorable mention, to be to Chris Godwin, because it was that sequence early in the 4th quarter where he has the contested touchdown catch and he has the contested 2-point conversion to go up 28-14 with about 13 minutes left, whatever it was. That should have been enough. Most EP teams, most EP defenses going up 2 scores, that sequence down at the goal line, that should have been enough to, I mean, at the bare minimum, get you an overtime. but really for 9 out of 10 teams win you the football game in regulation. So I'll give Chris, because that was, again, that's the stuff the Bucs missed all year long. They missed Mike Evans, they missed Chris Godwin, and they performed in a lot of ways. I know Godwin only had 20 yards, but in a lot of ways, those two performed the way they always have and the way the Bucs intended this offense to function.
And you could tell, despite being out for a while, Baker has a ton of trust in Mike Evans, throwing up those jump balls, and he came down with them. He made him even more of a believer, and even he had some trust on McMillan. McMillan made some made 2 really good catches. One was kind of a tough one on a 3rd down that got a first down. So, and even Kirk Herbstreit mentioned that the timing didn't seem off despite both being out for a while. But all right, that's going to do it for us, the Bucs Squad. We'll be back next Tuesday to preview the game against the Carolina Panthers. Make sure to follow James. He posts his daily shows, so check him out. He does a great job. But until next time, fire the cannons.